Starters are served with rice. Senior citizens get a special menu which includes a free soup or salad. Make Denny's your new lunch spot, located in Tamuning and the Micronesia Mall.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So here we are again. Welcome out there, all you and all you members of the Tall Tale Posse and our international radio listening audience. You've come to the right place. If you're looking for a conservative echo chamber, you've come to the right place, right, Real Joe Cruz?
You had me checking the instruments if there was a problem. You're right, sir.
Yeah.
This is the place.
So we, not we. My personal pronoun is I, not we, although I sometimes lapse into the editorial we, but I hope you'll catch me on that, Real Joe Cruz. We need a special sound effect that sounds something like this. Every time I say we when I should be saying I. You got that? Okay, well, we are going to be watching you on that one. All right.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, so, my personal pronouns are not they. My personal pronouns are he and him, not they. And as a matter of personal preference, if you're out there in our international radio listening audience and you feel an urge to be politically correct, I would rather hear you rub your fingernails over the blackboard than refer to another person as they, as is so politically correct now and then. And I do it from time to time just to jerk the chains of any lefty that might be listening, although I suspect that an awful lot of the lefties would rather be hearing impaired, than spend an afternoon listening to Tall Tales. But here we go. We've been through the Second Amendment portion of the program. Next, we go to Zemi Ikotny. And as you well know, in Zemi Ikotny, I take a look at the two daily news. Well, we've got a daily newspaper and a has-been daily newspaper. The Pacific Daily News used to be a daily newspaper, but I don't know if it meets the criterion for being a daily newspaper anymore because it doesn't run daily editorials. Today being a good example. Today is from the USA Today editorial board. So I suppose what we could do would be to ask the editorial board here at the Daily News to start writing editorials about Guam to be published in Washington, D.C. newspapers. Daily newspapers ought to publish local editorials dealing with local issues, and this one hasn't done it for so long. They're still stuck at 55 blue stars. I got my blue pencil here. Compared to now 170 for the Post. Yesterday, I awarded a blue star to Ken L.G., the other Governor Leon Guerrero. If the Daily News isn't careful, Ken is going to have more blue stars than they do. So today is no exception. Here is the title of today, what appears on the editorial page of the Pacific Daily News today, where a local editorial ought to appear. It says, Our View, Privacy versus Security. And the lead-in sentence is, blaming Apple on gunmen's iPhones isn't enough. I'm not going to go any farther than that. And then we have the Post, which day in and day out writes topical, pertinent, editorial, well-written editorials dealing with the issues of the day. They're edgy. They hold people accountable. They don't pull the Post doesn't pull its punches. They don't pull their punches, right? Yeah, they tell it like it is, and they get a lot of blue stars because of that. So today, the sad state of the Hagåtña public pool shows a lack of common sense. The public swimming pool in Hagåtña has often ended up in the news because it has repeatedly broken down. For our community, this government facility operated under the responsibility of the Department of Parks and Recreation isn't just a swimming pool for fun. It has launched some of our youth's dreams of landing spots in the Olympics and in college-level swim leagues. We all know it happens to be the only easily accessible pool in the central part of the island where our youth train for regional and international swim meets. We've seen past Guam Olympians grow up training in this very same pool. What was that kid's name? Hollis Kimbrough that did so well? Yeah. He's probably your age, I think, Real Joe Cruz.
I'm really old, sir.
You're older than you look, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Way older.
Yeah. So I was 22 once myself.
Thanks, sir.
Unfortunately, over the past nearly 2 years, we have seen the pool fall into disrepair with more frequency than before. 2 gubernatorial administrations have had to carry this responsibility and the accompanying challenges that they've not been able to effectively address over the long term. We've heard Parks and Recreation representatives acknowledge recently the pool has continued to operate at the risk of the safety of swimmers, even without a fully functioning filtration system, which leads to the growth of bacteria. Even when the pool water has turned a light shade of green, an indicator that it is no longer clean and is growing algae, it took a Guam Environmental Protection Agency test to shut down the pool more recently. There are not only concerns that the public pool will be out of commission for months, a regional swim meet slated to be held there in a few months could be in jeopardy and could cause further embarrassment to Guam. Kind of like when we had this international baseball get-up at the Paseo, and when it got dark, we had to stop playing because we don't know how to turn on the lights. And of course, Jimmy helped us out with that one. If you remember, can I repeat that one?
Sure.
Here's what Jimmy said. Oh, you know how many Guam employees it takes to change a light bulb?
How many?
Can't tell you. It's a personnel matter.
Oh, it's still as good as it was the first time.
Yeah. Yeah, when Jimmy's on, he's really on. Is the Jimmy line open now, Real Joe Cruz?
It's open, sir. They're all open.
The Tom line, the Jimmy line?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I suppose our Carl line. You usually don't.
Lines and the another lines.
You don't turn on the our Carl line until late in the program, usually.
That's true.
Yeah. Okay. The administration has recently announced plans to use $200,000 to fix the filtration system at the pool. That could either be money well spent or money that could get wasted if the job isn't done right, as was the case in past fixes that led to recurring breakdowns of the pool for various reasons. Past reasons have included a water leak, which led to a nearly $500,000 water bill that Gov Guam had trouble paying for months, not to mention the filtration problem. Would that $200,000 be better spent on completely rebuilding the pool with a brand new filtration system that keeps it clean most of the time over the long term? The pool is a symbol of our government's commitment to providing the island's youth with a venue for some of their future aspirations and to keep our youth busy with wholesome fun and an affordable way to stay fit. But if our government neglects to properly keep this government facility functioning properly, it also says so much about how the youth and their future may not be top of mind for the policymakers and those in authority to decide where public money should be spent. Maybe we should build a pool in Honolulu and then give the kids plane tickets to Honolulu if they wanted to swim. That way we could find out who we are, Real Joe Cruz. Right?
We? What do you mean we, sir? Hita?
Hame.
Hame.
Sorry, Hame, yeah. Are the priorities of those who proclaim to care for the youth in check? Part of the answer lies in looking at the sad state of the pool. Yeah, you know, the Department of Parks and Recreation that can't turn the lights on at the baseball field and can't keep the pool swimmable. The short name for Parks and Recreation is Parks and Rec. Yeah, I went up to Parks and Rec to see, and in that context, rec is spelled R-E-C. It's just short for recreation. But if I were a member of the legislature, I would introduce a bill to change the name of that department to Parks and Rec, W-R-E-C-K, because it is a wreck. Thank you, Real Joe Cruz. Okay, once again, the Post smacks the ball really hard. It's a good thing that the Post came to bat during the daylight because it's hard to hit the ball when the lights don't go on. But the Post, once again, receives the coveted Blue Star. So that takes us up.
Excuse me.
Yeah, that takes us up to 171 for the Post, 55 for the Daily News, 3 for Candid News, 1 for Ken Longuerero. That takes us then to the card, Real Joe Cruz. Yeah, and this is what I've got on the card. I've got San Nicolas versus Lou, and of course this one will be on the card for a while, as long as Lou and the governor and the governor's office continue to milk this whole war claims thing, much to the chagrin, I'm sure, of Mike San Nicolas, who is the real hero of the whole deal. And then on the next item on the card, I've got Crystal Ball versus Bavacqua. I read Bavacqua's column today, and I dug in my closet, and I got my crystal ball out. And I'm glad I did, because not only could I see things in the crystal ball, it kind of spoke to me. Because as I was looking at it, I heard this kind of funny sound. I'll get to that when I get to the second item on the card. And then we've got Tall Tales versus Mike Carlson, how the government of Guam is somehow able to lease real property for 15 years, but buy a building sitting on the leasehold, as though when the lease expires, that building, as though it were a blimp or a dirigible or some other kind of lighter-than-air concoction, would float up off the leasehold. We could hook it up to a tractor and tow it somewhere else and set it down on another piece of real property. And then we've got Pedo versus the Post. And the lesson here for Pedo, I'll get to it, is Pedo, never pick a fight with a man who buys his newsprint by the carload and his ink by the barrel. Words of wisdom. And then I've got, we're going to revisit the hoax of racism versus common sense. You'll remember that was a Dan Ho column. And then the ever popular Titano versus Casil. And for those of you who haven't tuned in for a little while, we have a senator whose name is Kelly Marsh Titano, or Marsha Kelly Titano. I'm never quite sure which. But the Titano appears in parentheses. That's how she writes it out. And it's just too cumbersome to say Kelly Marsh parenthesis Titano close parenthesis. So I have assigned a sound to that mark, that looks like a little bit of a C on your keyboard. I've assigned a sound to it, so I just repeat the sound instead of saying the whole word. And this is how parenthesis sounds on Tall Tales. So the item on the card is Titano versus Casil. And then I've got Paco and Pito versus Pacel and Alvarez, back to cockfighting again. And Chief Ignacio versus Public Safety. And then I've got Tall Tales versus the Hell No group. And Robert Underwood versus Us, Ame. And the Pope versus Trump, and Antonio Gramsci versus y'all. And I know some of these items, and some of these are really good, like Tall Tales versus the Hell No group, and Chief Ignacio versus Public Safety. But these other items come along that are more topical, and I feel like I have to address them while they're hot. And the ones that are a little farther down the list are not perishable. Robert Underwood versus Us will be as good a week from today as it is today. So the fact that I'm not getting to them should not trouble you too much. Okay, so now we go to San Nicolas versus Lou. And once again, I have to congratulate Governor Lou Leon Guerrero on a brilliant public relations masterpiece. She has gotten so much good press out of this already, and it's just the beginning, because I'm sure she's going to get more and more good press out of it. Well, as I said earlier, she will milk it down to the last drop. So I've got the other Governor, Leon Guerrero, on the line. Good afternoon, Ken.
Good afternoon. I apologize for breaking into the card, but I'm getting ready to go into a meeting. I wanted to talk a little bit about the insanity of buying a building with a 15-year ground lease. I mean, that is unbelievable. I can't believe that somebody thought that was a good idea. But then again, we're talking about politicians.
Well,
this purchase is the perfect example of payback to a politically well-connected insider using the public treasury.
Not to mention the fact that it's an impossibility, Ken. If you're dealing with real property, if a building sits on real property, you can't sever the building from the real property unless you've got a really complicated contract. So yeah. It is possible to buy a leasehold if A and B have a leasehold interest in Blackacre that lasts 20 years. B is the lessee, and C wants to buy B's interest in that leasehold. He could buy it, but he takes the leasehold with all fixtures and improvements, including the buildings. So yeah. to say that, well, we bought the building, but we got to pay $6,000 a month for the next 15 years for the lease. Whoever, and that's Lester Carlson's words, he must think we're really stupid.
Well, whoever made that deal was really stupid, because, and all we have to do is go back to the Guam YTK, where a panel of lawyers in arbitration awarded them the value of a building they did not build, and the profits of a company that never sold anything.
But this was at the commercial port, Ken, and there's a special kind of anti-gravity that works at the commercial port. So not only did that YTK phenomenon happen, but a guy who was fired from a job that he never should have got back pay of about $400,000.
Yeah. Well, the reason why I wanted to chime in on this is because this situation happened a lot in Hawaii, where people, when the leases were coming up, the trust companies were just jacking it up astronomically. And one case I know of in particular that was cited for breaking these trusts, there was a house where the lease for the first 35 years was $101 a month. And when the lease renewed at $990 a month. And the justification was, well, we have to look at the value of this house. Well, the lease holder technically owned the house, but not really, because the house was attached to the property. Just imagine what's going to happen in 15 years when that lease comes up and government of Guam goes to whoever owns that lease, and I'm going to assume it's probably Addis Trust, which owned the building, and says, okay, we're going to change that, and instead of $6,000 a month, we're going to charge $26,000 a month. I mean, that's kind of similar to the money the court is paying for a building it's not using, right?
But of course, the leasehold will be worth a lot more at the end of 15 years because of all of the improvements that the government did to the building on the leasehold.
Yeah. So this ranks up into one of the dumber of a long list of dumb financial decisions put forth by this administration, and it's just pure political pork barrel politics. So in other words, they're reaching deep into the taxpayers' pockets to reward some politically well-connected insider, and this has got to stop.
Upon reading the story, I fired off a sunshine law request to the governor's director of communications to get the details on the lease. So this is one of those that I'm not going to let go. I'm going to stick with this until I expose, or maybe you can help me, we expose everything that actually happened here, Ken.
Yeah, either that or someone's going to have to put $1,000 into the ethics fund.
Could be. Of course, whatever happened to the ethics commission? I saw a picture in the paper of their swearing-in ceremony, and I haven't seen anything of them yet since.
As I recall, the last I heard is they're going to put together their rules and policies and procedures, and they're going to stand up the commission in April 2020.
I think I could make an argument that of itself is an ethical violation. You can't have a public duty and dilly-dally around and say, they were sworn in September. You can't dilly-dally around and say, we're not going to start performing our functions yet because we're not ready.
Well, this is part of the reason why I'm pushing for new people to get into the legislature, because that's where we as citizens and voters can exert our greatest power at the legislative level, because we get to choose those people, and based on what what I'm seeing out in the community, people are getting smarter about the shenanigans and the games that are being played. And the pedo circus this past weekend was a perfect example. I mean, for them to cry alligator tears that there was no money was bull hockey, because they've got money galore, and they're the ones that appropriate the money. They can reach into any fund they want, and there's a lot of funds that have money, and then for them to say, oh, we can't do anything because of the 240-day rule. They're the ones that made the 240-day rule, and all they had to do was write a notwithstanding.
So it's
use for everything.
It was called Pedo's Bait and Switch, Ken.
Oh, okay.
So Ken, I got another Joe. I've got another Joe on the line, and I've got a guy named Kellis that you probably know.
I've heard of him.
Yeah, he's a pretty good caller. So thanks for calling, and I gave you special leave to take an item on the card out of order because you got the blue star yesterday. You're doing much better than the Daily News, so congratulations.
Well, thank you for that.
Okay, so we're going to take a short break, and then we'll come back to another Joe and Kellis.
GRMC's cardiology department treats most complex heart problems. In our catheterization lab, cardiologists use imaging equipment to treat clogged arteries that can cause heart attacks or heart failure. We perform balloon angioplasty, stenting, and other life-saving cardiac procedures. If you suffer from a heart condition, have your provider refer you to GRMC's cardiology clinic at 645-5500. GRMC, where patients are partners.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
UOG Endowment Foundation presents How to Say I Love You, Love Languages in the Pacific, Thursday, February 13th at the Guam Museum from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. $60 per person includes cultural delicacies, free-flowing drinks, and live entertainment. Love Languages in the Pacific will benefit the liberal arts and fine arts programs.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
Yeah, I just glanced at one of Brad Hewitt's comments, and I had an idea. Maybe instead of letting the Department of Parks, as you were, the Director of Parks and Recreation be in charge of the Agania Pool, maybe we should give it to Guam Waterworks Authority. Guam Waterworks Authority knows how to manage a sewer plant. Yeah. Yes. Okay, so let's see. Now I've got another Joe on the line, Real Joe Cruz. Just to be clear, this is not you. This is another Joe. Good afternoon, another Joe.
Or I could be really good at imitating other people's voices.
Yeah, you can try that one. Start out with the Real Joe Cruz. I'll give you your lines. Okay, are you ready for your lines?
This could be the Real Joe.
Yeah, another Real Joe Cruz. I mean, another Joe. Are you ready for your lines to impersonate the Real Joe Cruz?
Let's try it. Let's try it out. Okay.
Here's how it goes. You're right, Bob.
You're right, Bob.
Bob, you're right.
Yeah, Bob, you're right.
Yeah, that's really all you need to do. All you really need to know if you are the Real Joe Cruz, right, Real Joe Cruz?
You're hired on another Joe.
Let's go. Keep it simple, right?
Uh-huh.
All right, so, Bob, here's the deal. What about these families that lease their land to the hotel franchises, right? So, actually, they still own the land, right? At some point, they wouldn't possibly want to somehow own the actual structure. I mean, or you're saying that they would not need to purchase the structure because if you say the lease is up, then the building automatically is owned by the landowner. Is that what you're saying?
When you build a building on real property, it becomes part of the real property. So if, for instance, if I own the real property where the Hilton is right now, and Hilton or whoever it is has a 25-year lease, I own that building.
After 25 years?
No, I own it right now.
Okay.
The landlord owns the realty, subject to the lease.
So the Jose family, the in-laws of Senator Adat, I think they own the was it the Hyatt?
I don't know if they own it. I know they owned it at one time. I don't know if they're leasing it to Hyatt or if they sold it to Hyatt. I think they sold it, but I really don't know, Real Joe Cruz.
Oh, so okay, so well,
Another
I
Joe.
wasn't sure. I was mix it up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't sure, but let's hope that it gets cleared up soon, and it's not as corrupt as we hope it isn't. But have you heard anything about some sort of meeting of intellectual types at UOG sometime this month?
I think they reserved a broom closet for that meeting. Every intellectual at the UOG will attend.
I'm an actor. There's like an act. I don't no, but I thought I heard something like advertised on one of the. Not sure which radio program, but you haven't heard anything to the effect, then?
No, I haven't. And if they're having a meeting of intellectuals at the university, I don't think so because I haven't been invited.
They better. That should be one of the first things to do is invite you. Okay,
exactly.
Okay, Bob, I'll just I'll keep listening and let us know what the outcome is with the Senate. Do you think it's going to be handled this month, or it's going to carry on to next month, or?
You mean the impeachment trial?
No, I'm sorry. The thing that St. Nicholas is working on.
Oh yeah. Well, St. Nicholas. I'm going to get to that here in a minute, but St. Nicholas said that there's a possibility that the Senate might conduct ordinary business in the morning and impeachment in the afternoon. If that's the case, he thinks maybe a couple of weeks.
Okay. All right. Thanks a lot, Bob. I'll check back with you.
Thanks for calling, another Joe, and practice those lines now. Okay, another Joe, and then I've got I got Kellis on the line. Good afternoon, Kellis.
You're right, Bob.
Thank you.
So what I was thinking about is in your bag of tricks as being a lawyer, I'm sure that you have some special glasses that can read invisible ink.
Ah.
So what's possible on the lease, because even if, when you get a copy of the lease, you'll have to put these glasses on because there might be a clause in there that says that they have to return the property back to its original condition. And so by buying the building, they can no longer have to do that. Have you thought of that?
Well, let me say this about invisible ink, okay?
Yeah.
Lawyers don't have special glasses that allows them to read invisible ink, but they do have special pens that will write in disappearing ink.
Oh. Okay.
So you write something out and it looks fine, and you pick it up and look at it 3 days later. Hey, where is that? It's gone.
Well, because I'm sure there must have been a clause. That's the only reason I can consider that them buying this building is there must have been a clause at one point that said that the property had to be returned back to its pre-condition. And that's the only reason that they bought the building, so that they can, void that clause.
Well, that would mean that the condition, because they're leasing it with the building on it. So, yeah.
But I'm sure there's a really good reason to buy the building is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Because the government of Guam is very frugal with their money. And, they don't just, willy-nilly toss it around. I mean, they're very careful at how they, like I said, they're very frugal people.
They would never make advance payments to people, keeping their fingers crossed that Congress would pass a bill reimbursing them for the gifts.
Bob, again, I think you're just reading too much into it, because obviously they know, because they can see that far in advance that the payment is coming. It's coming at before the end of the month.
Well, I think that rather than dung-colored glasses, I think they've got rose-colored glasses down there, Ken. Ellis?
But yeah, so like I said, there must be something in the lease that said that if they didn't outright buy the building, that they would have to destroy the building before they could take over the property.
Well, I still like my lighter than air airlift theory.
But you see, the problem with that theory is that building is actually attached to the ground.
Yeah.
With the concrete and everything.
Yeah.
So if it was a blimp, I could understand it. But I've actually driven past the building, and I do not see tethered to the ground.
Okay. Well, back to the drawing board, Kellis.
Yeah, so that's why I'm thinking that it must have been if they don't buy the building, they were going. Then the government of Guam would have to destroy the building before they got the property because they couldn't take the building.
And then
so we would have had to pay money to destroy it.
And
so
then
by buying it, we're saving money.
And then the lessor could build another building on that building and lease it to the government of Guam, correct?
Yes.
Well, I appreciate your sarcasm, Kellis, and I really appreciate the help. As sarcastic as I am, I can't do it all by myself, so thanks a lot.
You're right, Bob.
Okay, so long, Kellis. All right, so San Nicolas responds. This is San Nicolas versus Lou. And I started out once again by giving Governor Lou Leon Guerrero a oral pat on the back. She has pulled off as great a public relations coup as I've seen in my 57 years of observing Guam politics. I don't think anyone has gotten a better public relations blast for actually doing nothing in all of the time that I've been watching. And of course, I understand this morning they had a ribbon cutting at the Hakabotan Clinic. I suppose we'll see pictures of that on tonight's TV news and in tomorrow's paper. And I understand that people were there very early in the morning. So I have this mental image of emanam ko ge peta nai wahe e jonieha papetnieha chan benai e para e magahaga. Oh, such a touching scene. All of them so grateful for Governor Lou for finally standing up for them. Yeah, I can see it all now. Well, as I keep saying, Lou has the public relations upper hand because so often people's understanding of what goes on is about as deep as the last headline they read. So an awful lot of people that get those checks won't understand the complexities involved unless they listen to Tall Tales, and then they'll know a chapter and verse, of course, like just about everything else that comes up here on Tall Tales. So when they get the checks, whether it's a check drawn on the government of Guam or a check drawn on the U.S. Treasury, 99.9% of them will say, "Ay, ade, si governor na igubiak no, si lo this, si mumu na mumu si lo, manamko, she fought for us. If it hadn't been for Lou, this would have never happened. I'm so thankful I've got this check. Thank you, Governor Lou." Not understanding that had it not been for San Nicolas discovering Madeline's screw-up and then getting a bill through the House that clears the screw-up, that bill pending before the Senate right now, there wouldn't be any pot of gold to make an advancement from. And that's exactly what they're doing. So as San Nicolas comes along here and attempts to lay out a factual record as to what happened and what could happen, those who pay any attention to him are going to say, yeah, sour grapes. Lou won. Let her have it. And then, of course, I mentioned this the other day. When Wonpat decided that her lungs wouldn't take any more of the smoke-filled room called the Democrat Party closed-door meeting, where it was decided that the Democrats were going to back BJ for Washington in a dumb San Nicolas move, this all works out really well, you know. So Lou is achieving two things here. She's making Lou look really good, and she's not, and in the process making San Nicolas look not so good, because Lou's taking all the credit for herself. So when it comes time to vote for a Washington delegate, it's going to be easy for Lou to say, you know, I'm backing B.J. Cruz. Years and years of public service. And, you know, Mike San Nicolas, when I was fighting for your war claims, he was not helping me. Let's vote for B.J. So San Nicolas has got a tough road to hoe. And here's the latest that ran in the Post, in San Nicolas versus Lou. As the government of Guam prepares to process the payments for war claims using local money, Delegate Michael San Nicolas issued caution Thursday. Now, right there, what's to be cautious about? We've waited so long. He said the government of Guam will get to choose who gets paid, that a memorandum of agreement with the U.S. Department of Treasury does not guarantee reimbursement to Gov Guam, and that there is no process to facilitate requests from claimants in the states. So, you know, the word coming out of Adelup is going to be, yeah, for every silver lining, Michael San Nicolas, the weatherman, can find a dark cloud. In response, Carlo Branch, the governor's director of policy, provided one sentence: "Peace be with you and all those we lost waiting for this day." High ground, pretty easy. Nearly 1,500 claims have been approved for payment by the Foreign Claims Settlement Commission via the federal law called the Guam World War II Loyalty Recognition Act. The governor on Thursday signed the agreement needed to process payments through local monies. San Nicolas has been working on passing H.R. 1365, a resolution that addresses a flaw in the law pushed forward by his predecessor, then-Delegate Madeline Berdallo. Berdallo's version failed to authorize the U.S. Department of Treasury to make payments on claims. The delegate issued a release following the signing of the MOA. He stated Guam would pay only living claimants able to assign over claims. We have no idea how many of the claims that have been adjudicated are actually of living claimants. While we all share in a desire to have everyone live to see this day, so many families are being left behind, and that is not being upfront, San Nicolas said, in part. The enabling law, the Loyalty Recognition Act, does not have language to pay third parties, specifically limits payments to, quote, a person. The government of Guam is not a person. With no reference to third-party entities like the government of Guam, San Nicolas said. San Nicolas also said there's no local process set up to facilitate requests from claimants residing in the U.S. mainland. Well, what do you expect, Mike? Guam residents residing in the mainland don't vote for governor of Guam, so who cares? Okay, coming up here, getting pretty close to the big halftime show. We're going to take a short break, and then in 10 minutes we'll do the halftime show.
People come to Chili's for a million reasons. For happy hour, date night, birthdays, or just because it's Tuesday. But if you ask us what brings people into our restaurants time and time again, is that Chili's moment. You know the one. When you eat so much you want to fall asleep at the table, or when you meet up with good friends and it turns into a party. At Chili's, moments like these matter, and we want to make more of them. So there may be a million reasons to Chili's, but all you really need is one. Chili's, savor the moment in our new location in the Tumon Sands Plaza, second floor.
At the mall, as you enjoy your shopping, dining, or entertainment, you could also win 3 great cars from Atkins Kroll and thousands of prizes in Micronesia Mall's Cars, Prizes, and Getaways game. Present your mall receipts and have a chance to win the renowned performance Chevrolet Camaro, the unapologetic rugged Toyota 4Runner, or the head-turning Lexus ES350 Luxury. Getaways to Manila, courtesy of Philippine Airlines, plus prizes from Foot Locker and Burger King. The more you shop, the more chance to win in Micronesia Mall's Cars, Prizes, and Getaways game.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Yeah, so here we are again. I'm sure if you watch TV tonight, the two TV newses, read tomorrow's paper, you'll see more of the Leon Guerrero show in living color. And I suspect that you'll be able to stretch it out at least into next week. Michael San Nicolas, of course, has the unenviable task of trying to get the Senate to act on his 1365. And I've mentioned this before. What Lou is doing is great PR, no question about it. And by the way, I just noticed when I was looking through my papers here, even Will Castro gets cut in on it, because I'm looking at the signing ceremony that took place on January 23 when Lou signed the Memorandum of Understanding. All Democrats and Will Castro, who used to be the minority leader till the Republicans kicked him out, and then he said, "Well, yeah, I'm going to run for Washington, for Washington delegate." But anyhow, the Leon Guerrero public relations extravaganza is extremely well constructed public relations, but fiscally very irresponsible. And I've mentioned this before. Let's suppose hypothetically that San Nicolas's Bill 1365 does not make it through the Senate. And that's a possibility, because anytime you propose any kind of a measure to any kind of a legislative body, whether it's the U.S. House of Representatives, the United States Senate, the Guam legislature, the Consolidated Commission on Utilities, there's always an element of crapshoot involved. And even though you think something is going to happen, it doesn't necessarily mean it would. As an example, last Friday, Talina Nelson wanted to push a bill through the legislature to recall the mayor of Jonia, until Pito Terlahi came along with his bait and switch, took the bill away from Talina Nelson like an adult taking candy away from a baby, and then all of the other 13 senators in the room voted in favor of the bill. So that doesn't have anything to do with war claims, but I'm just mentioning it because in the Senate, that we won't know that that bill passes until it actually passes. And then it goes from there to Donald Trump. And of course, we're hoping that Donald Trump would sign the bill, but I know there are some people out there I don't know if they're part of our traditional Tall Tales posse, but there are some people who think that Donald Trump is a mercurial president and that you can never really predict on what he's going to do. Maybe, maybe not. But in any case, Lou is paying out your money, taxpayers' money, $14 million worth of your money, keeping her fingers tightly crossed at all times, because when San Nicolas's 1365 becomes law, then the Treasury will reimburse all of the money that Lou is paying to the Manamku for this great public relations opportunity. So she's making an advance against something she hopes will happen. I hope it'll happen too, but, you know, that's not saying that it would. And if it doesn't, then guess who's going to pick up the tab for all this money that Lou is going to be handing out over at the Hakabotan building? And St. Nicholas points that out in his press release as to what's going on. And as I've said more than once, what I want to see is a effective, efficient government operating within the rule of law, providing basic governmental services, and making advances against something you hope for is not basic governmental services. It's fiscally irresponsible. Yeah, I know they've been waiting a long time. People are dying every day. They're old folks. And say, I know all of that. But fiscal responsibility doesn't depend on your feelings. And that's what we're talking about here. This whole drill is about feelings. Lou wants to make everybody feel good because it's just human nature. If someone makes you feel good, you like that person, right? You know, it happens to me all the time. I can hardly go anywhere on Guam, Real Joe Cruz, without people coming, just storming me and saying, you know, Bob, I really like your radio show. I listen to Tall Tales. You're such a great host. Well, you know, that makes me feel, it's true, of course.
It is.
And it's not based just on emotion, but still, I got to admit, it makes me feel good. So, and that's exactly what Lou is doing. She's making people feel good by using your money in a fiscally irresponsible manner, so that when it comes time for her to run for re-election, you can bet when it's re-election time, if you missed any of the video opportunities that are going to come up in the next few days, you'll get a second chance in 2022. You'll get to see all of those scenes again. So I'm going to put this aside. I'm sure I'll be picking it back up on Monday because I'm sure there'll be another event in the continuing saga of Lou versus Michael San Nicolas and Lou versus the Treasury of Guam. Let me see if anybody's chimed in on Facebook here concerning what we've been talking about here recently. James Howard, can you imitate Simple Jack, please? Simple Jack. You think he's referring to the guy that calls and tells me that I don't know Jack?
I don't think he's referring to Simple Jack. I think he's talking about a character from a movie.
Really?
Yeah, I think it is.
Simple Jack?
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen that movie.
I think it was called Tropic Thunder, sir.
Yeah, I didn't see that movie. Okay, time for the big halftime show. After the halftime show, we're going to go to Crystal Ball versus Bavacqua. So make sure you stay tuned in.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
A Another marathon day. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. Democratic impeachment managers get one more day on Friday to make their case that President Trump should be removed from office. On Thursday, they argued the president abused his power.
To get the Oval Office meeting, President Zelensky had to move forward on the phony political investigations.
New York Democrat Hakeem Jeffries says evidence from testimony and documents proves President Trump has no real concern about corruption in Ukraine, but instead was motivated by political concerns.
Fox's Jared Halpern. The president's legal team also gets 3 days for its side in the Senate trial. Fox's Chad Pergram tells us what to expect.
Now, we're expecting the defense to start on Saturday. We're thinking that might be an abbreviated session, and then the Q&A period begins. 16 hours, probably sometime around the middle of next week. A lot of Republicans would like to summon Adam Schiff, the chair of the Intelligence Committee, as a fact witness here. There's some chatter here that what the Republican senators might do is make him into a de facto witness during the question and answer session.
Meantime, President Trump says he will likely release his Mideast peace plan before he meets next week with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his rival Benny Gantz. In Israel, Vice President Mike Pence invited Netanyahu to visit the White House.
I'm grateful that you accepted the invitation, and we look very much forward to welcome you to our nation's capital to continue discussions about a broad range of issues, mutual concern between the United States and Israel, but also about the prospect of peace.
Pence and other world leaders were in Israel to commemorate the 75th anniversary of the liberation of the Auschwitz concentration camp. And stocks regained ground on Thursday. The Nasdaq closed at a record high. America's listening to Fox News.
Yikes, are those Christmas bills coming in already? Those high-interest credit cards at 16, 18, even 24%? Well, we have a New Year's solution for you. A Bank Pacific personal loan with rates as low as 4.65% to pay off those expensive credit cards. It's easy, it's fast, and it's as low as 4.65% APR.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal credit opportunity lender as low as 4.65%. Conditions apply.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tumon is stirring up some of your favorite drinks all night long. Come down on Wednesday and Friday nights from 5:30 to 10 p.m. Indulge in some of your favorite local cuisine and pair it with your favorite drink. From our ice-cold beers, our finest selection of wines and liquors, to our top-notch cocktail specials, your friends at Mezcla Bistro Tumon are ready to serve you. Why limit happy to only an hour? The Mezcla family reminds everyone to drink responsibly. See you on Wednesday and Friday night.
At least one case of the deadly coronavirus confirmed in the U.S., and there may be more.
A 25-year-old woman was just hospitalized in New Jersey. Doctors are still evaluating her. They haven't quite diagnosed her just yet. Meantime, medics are monitoring 16 people who had close contact with patient 0, as he's being called, in Washington state. Right now, those people have not apparently developed the illness, but they're just being watched. Another suspected victim is in a California hospital. That patient arrived at LAX from Mexico City, and down in Texas, a Texas A&M student is being tested for possible exposure after traveling to China.
Fox's Aisha Hasney, 25 people confirmed dead in China and more than 800 people infected. Concerns about the virus now affecting the Olympics.
As Wuhan, China remains on lockdown over concerns surrounding the coronavirus, the Olympics electing to cancel a boxing qualifying event ahead of the Summer Olympics in Tokyo later this year. The qualifier called off after news of the outbreak, which has killed at least 17 people in China. The Wuhan event was slated for February 3rd. This is a qualifier for women's soccer, has also been moved out of the city. Concerns over the coronavirus not limited to just Wuhan, as Japan is already cautious about exposing athletes, tourists, and locals to the disease during the Tokyo Games. Matt Napolitano, Fox News.
Former NFL player Antonio Brown surrenders to police in Florida. TMZ reports that Brown showed up at the Broward County Jail Thursday night in answer to an arrest warrant. He faces charges including burglary with battery after a dispute at his Hollywood, Florida home with a delivery driver. And another state considers a sweeping abortion ban. Tennessee Governor Bill Lee says he will introduce legislation to ban abortion once a fetal heartbeat is detected, typically about 6 weeks into pregnancy. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
at the mall as you enjoy your shopping, dining, or entertainment. You could also win 3 great cars from Atkins Kroll and thousands of prizes in Micronesia Mall's Cars, Prizes, and Getaways game. Present your mall receipts and have a chance to win the renowned performance Chevrolet Camaro, the unapologetic rugged Toyota 4Runner, or the head-turning Lexus ES350 Luxury. Getaways to Manila, courtesy of Philippine Airlines, plus prizes from Foot Locker and Burger King. The more you shop, the more chance to win in Micronesia Mall's Cars, Prizes, and Getaways game.
Most talk shows only give you selected opinions from one side of the political aisle.
You know, I don't like what they're doing. It's bad. Everything is bad. It's all bad, 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 bad.
We do it a bit differently on The Ray Gibson Show. We bring you the newsmakers from the left, the right, and the middle in order to give you the full view of the issues that affect all of us here on Guam. Right or left, we bring you to the middle of the conversation on The Ray Gibson Show, weekday mornings from 6 to 10 on Guam's only news talk superstation, 93.3 The Point.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Well, here we are, that big halftime show that we all like so much, as exciting as ever. I especially like the cannon fire at the end of the show. Well, I had a chance to peek at Facebook comments here during the halftime show, and I found one that I think bears repeating. This one came from Jim Smith, and this is what Jim Smith said. Bob is the most modest person he knows. Yeah, that's right, Jim. That's very perceptive, and I'm glad you recognize that. And because I don't know if you knew this or not, but Jim, I'm a humble person, and I'm very, very proud of my humility. Yeah. Okay, so here we are. Enough about me. Now let's talk about you. What did you think about the first half of Tall Tales? Okay. So the next item on the card, crystal ball versus Bavacqua. I haven't looked at my crystal ball for a long time, but you'll recall I used to get it out from time to time, and I was very accurate when it came to predicting who would get what job, who would wind up where in the government, et cetera. What do you think my accuracy rate was, Real Joe Cruz?
12%, sir. I'm just kidding. 99%, sir.
Funny joke. 99%. You're accurate. Okay, so I looked at my crystal ball when I read Bavacqua's column that appeared in today's daily newspaper. So I'll go through the column first, and then I'll tell you what I saw in my crystal ball. Full-time legislatures give a sense of stability. That's the headline. I find the recent discussion around a part-time legislature for Guam to be fascinating for a number of reasons. In truth, there are reasonable arguments for and against this proposal. Many of the arguments I've seen in favor of a part-time legislature boil down to, quote, 15 full-time don't do anything now, so what would be the harm if you had 15 or less not doing anything part-time? When this type of flippant assessment is supposed to stand in for rational evidence, we have a problem. We. Now, is that Hita or Hame? I think it's probably Hame, yeah. When considering this issue, it's important to consider why being a politician is a full-time job. A full-time paid job around the world. Tell that to the folks in New Hampshire there, Michael Bavacqua. $100 for 2 years to serve in the state legislature. When we look at the broad strokes of human history, we see that in many early societies, leadership in the community was reserved for those who had the wealth to allow them to spend time planning or managing the affairs of a town or village, while the interest of those who had to work all day wouldn't be heard. This came about in the first permanently settled areas by humans. Now, this guy has held himself out as an historian in the past. I guess I could understand how he would do that, and let me see if I could do that. Are you ready, Real Joe Cruz?
I'm ready, sir.
Yeah, I'm a historian. I guess that's all it takes. You make your announcement, and you're there. This came about, came about in the first permanently settled areas by humans. Those who made their money off the work and crops of others would by default become the leaders. Now, no matter what he's talking about, you read between the lines, and what words do you find written in here between the lines? Marxism. This came about in the first permanently settled areas by humans. Those who made their money off the work and crops of others would by default become the leaders. Instead of all power to the people, all power to the Soviets, a government by the proletariat. And then he goes on to say, we often think today of politicians receiving pay as abusive largesse. And in some cases it may be. But part of the historical rationale is also that leveling of the playing field to allow those who would want to serve their community the chance to do so without starving. Now, are we exaggerating a little bit here? If we had a part-time legislature, this would be an increased burden on Catholic social services, because the people who participated in the part-time legislature would be at risk of starving. Receiving a salary for their service doesn't prevent them from being biased or serving only certain interests, but it is nonetheless a system that has been created to try to minimize potential corruption. Minimize potential corruption. Like the great salary smash and grab of November 21, 2014. Potential corruption. And open up opportunities to lead to a wider segment of the community. No, because, the people forget this. When you're running for the legislature, there's no government salary involved. When you're on the outside and you're trying to break in, the government doesn't do anything for you. You only money you have is what you can make or what you can save. It's only after you're elected that the salary kicks into on a full-time legislature. And of course, the full-timers will do whatever they can to protect their incumbency and make it as difficult as possible for someone on the outside to break in, because if someone on the outside breaks in, someone on the inside is thrown out. So when we're talking about fairness and equality and everything like that, people forget that the salary doesn't start during the time you're running for office. It only starts after you're sworn in, if you're successful. The part-time versus full-time aspect is something where the evolution has been more diverse over time. Now there's a key word. Anything, if you want to win an argument in the year 2020, you've got to use the word diverse as part of your argument. I want you to do it the way I'm suggesting, because my way is more diverse. Oh, okay. I got it. Yeah, diversity. And of course, if you're over there on the left, you must spend a few minutes every day repeating the mantra, our strength is our diversity. Our strength is our diversity. You don't have to say you don't have to face Mecca when you're doing it. Just repeat it a few times. The part-time versus full-time aspect is something where the evolution has been more diverse over time. It is rare at the highest level of governance in a polity that the legislative body be part-time. 39 states, part-time legislature. 39 states. And it was a part-time legislature here, too. And at the time, I would say the quality of legislation was better than what we're getting now. It is rare at the highest level of governance in a polity that the legislative body be part-time. Switzerland is the only example I can think of today. You're not trying very hard, Michael. At lower levels of government, part-time legislatures are more common, although elected leaders are compensated at different levels and required to work more or less based on their region and on the gullibility of their populations. Having a full-time legislature doesn't mean that senators will automatically spend their time well or be effective. That's for sure. But it's important to understand why that system was come into existence and why it may be beneficial. I know the reason it came into existence, and I'm still having a hard time figuring out why it's more beneficial. Came into existence, it's part of that guy Tytler's law, that democracy can only last for 200 years. As soon as people figure out that they can vote themselves benefits from the public treasury, they do. So as soon as you give a legislature the ability to set its own salary, you're going to have a part-time legislature, like the smash and grab back on November 21, 2014. In the drafting of the Constitution, this issue of whether the federal legislative branch should be part or full-time was addressed. Now, here we go. You know, when you're talking about the Constitution, you can go to the Federalist, you can go to Common Sense, you can find a lot of writing, and you can cherry pick and find a quotation that backs up your point, even though the language of the Constitution might be completely out of sync with the quotation that you're citing, because at the time the quotation was made, the Constitution hadn't been enacted. Here we go. James Madison wrote in Federalist number 62 that a full-time assembly was needed to help ensure that leaders don't pursue interests of a private nature, and to give a sense of stability to ensure that they can devote their time and the intellectual, I think he's trying to say intellect, their time and intellectual to the study of the society they govern and how to improve it. So if we looked at the Constitution as enacted, it doesn't quite come out that way, because, let me see if I know what it is. Let me see if I can find it here in the little book that I always carry around. Here it goes. It's Article 1, Section 4, second paragraph. The Congress shall assemble at least once. The Congress shall assemble at least once. It doesn't say once a month, it says once. In every year, and such meeting shall be on the first Monday, and guess what month? Now, they're elected in November. So guess what month they have to have their first Monday of guess what month? December. So they got to, the Constitution says they got to meet at least once a year, and the meeting would be in the first Monday in December, unless by law they appoint a different day. So the framers said, we'll have a Congress, and they got to meet in December. Now stop and think about what that means. A lot of them were farmers. There isn't a whole lot for a farmer to do in December. The crops are in, it's too early to plant. So the thinking certainly was that by meeting in December, people could come to Washington, spend a month or so in the Congress, and then go home. The idea was not to have a full-time United States Congress. And I suppose if I spent a little time looking, I could tell you when Congress went to its current setup. Even in the days of LBJ, congressmen usually stayed in Washington over the weekend. Now, modern transportation is that congressmen are home probably more time in their home districts than they are in Washington. The system has become perverted from what it was designed to be. It was designed to be a part-time United States Congress, just as our legislature started out to be a part-time Guam legislature. So Bavacqua goes on to say, this sounds idealistic for sure, but it's one approach to providing governance for a society. Allocate resources so that there can be a stable bureaucracy that can help maintain institutions and provide oversight and collect information from the public. To maintain institutions like the swimming pool and the ballpark. Part-time legislatures around the U.S. regularly run into problems where legitimate oversight is limited due to limited staff and time. Part-time legislatures are often easy prey for lobbyists and special interest groups who just hand completed bills to overworked and underpaid legislators, eager to produce results, but too busy to govern. Now, this, of course, comes from Bavacqua's extensive experience working in part-time legislatures in the states. No. I must come from where he went to school, California, full-time legislature. As usual, much of Bavacqua's column is based on assumptions, and much of it has that same neo-Marxist statist ring to it. So if you are a separatist, the message here, the unspoken message is, if you're a separatist, you should be for a full-time legislature. That way we can make sure that the separatist movement continues to get as much local taxpayer funding as we can squeeze out of it. But now, here's where my crystal ball comes in. The end of the column always makes an attribution as to who wrote it. You know, like when I do an op-ed piece, it'll say Robert Klitzkie is a former senator or something like that, right? And here's what it says about Michael Lujan Bavacqua, who is a regular columnist for the Daily News. Michael Lujan Bavacqua is an author, artist, and activist, period. So he's an author, he's an artist, he's an activist. So I guess Ken and I and Andre and Troy will see him on September 2nd down at that soiree that Marsh is going to throw when her bill passes, where they're going to recognize people who have gone out and fought for the people of Guam. Now, here's the interesting thing about Bavacqua's column. His columns up until now ended like this, or were attributed like this. Michael Lujan Bavacqua is an author, artist, and activist, and assistant professor of Chamorro Studies at UOG. Notice something missing today? Doesn't say assistant professor of Chamorro Studies at UOG. So I wondered, what is going on here? So I got out my crystal ball and looked into it. And my crystal ball said, Bavacqua doesn't work at the university anymore. He's taken another job. No more assistant professor of Chamorro Studies at UOG. So then I said to myself, well, if he's not working there, where would he be working? And then I put my crystal ball aside for a moment, and I said, I'm going to speculate a little bit. If he is right now writing a column about how wonderful or how necessary a part-time legislature is, could it be that he's going to go to work at the legislature? It would, maybe it's just a coincidence, right? And correlation does not mean causation. Maybe it's just a coincidence. But not working at the UOG anymore, no longer an assistant professor of Chamorro Studies. And now he's never written about part-time legislature before. Now he comes out guns blazing. We got to have a part-time legislature. Now, if he were to go to work for the legislature, which scheme would he prefer? Full-time, the way it is now, or part-time? Because the way it is now, all he needs to do is have some senator. One senator has 11 employees. They're not exactly struggling down there with. So all he has to do is find one senator who would put him on the payroll and give him a job under the current system. If Jim Moylan's bill passed, it wouldn't be that easy. So when I was speculating like that, I got my crystal ball out again to see if there was anything in there that I might have missed. And I couldn't see anything in there at all. But then my crystal ball made a sound. This is what the sound that it made. My crystal ball went. So what do you think, Real Joe Cruz?
I don't know, your crystal ball is talking about
Yeah.
her or they?
They. It has to be they, yeah. So it could very well be that we'll see, maybe we won't see it in the news, but we'll find out that Bavacqua is working for them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Otherwise, why would he stop working at the university? It seemed like, it seemed like that. I've done some work at the university. I've done some adjunct teaching over the years, for all the way from remedial up to grad studies, and I really liked it. And there was one time I thought, boy, if I could be on the faculty, and get paid for dealing with stuff I really like, I think that'd be a great job. And Bavacqua, of course, is the in-house separatist at the university. So it really struck me when I saw that he's no longer, or at least he's not signing off as working at the university. So we'll just have to keep an eye on that, see where his columns go in the future. Okay, next item on the card is let's see here. Tall Tales versus Mike Carlson. I hope I have that paper. That's good. It's coming up with a break here. Maybe I can find what I'm looking for.
Half a day, I'm Governor Lou Leon Guerrero.
And I'm Lieutenant Governor Joshua Tenorio.
If you survived the Japanese occupation during World War II, filed a claim under the World War II Loyalty Recognition Act, and received a letter from the Foreign Claims Settlement Commission saying you are entitled to receive monetary compensation, then you may have an adjudicated claim.
Bring your claim letter and a valid government ID to our Guam War Claims Processing Center at the old Hakubotan building in Tamuning, Mondays to Fridays from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., and we will help you process your claim. If you have any questions or would like to know more, call us at 472-8931 or visit our website at warclaims.guam.gov.
Getting to this point wasn't easy, and our work isn't over. But we are now beginning to heal old wounds and honor our greatest generation. And we say to those still alive to hear it, your long wait is over.
Talk Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mezcla. Mezcla Restaurant in Agagna is closed for improvements and will reopen on the 27th of January. You can still get all your favorites at Mezcla Bistro in Tumon on the first floor of the Grand Plaza Hotel. Favorites like SD-style fish tacos, beer-battered tender fish fillets stuffed in corn tortillas and topped with cilantro lime, sour cream sauce, shredded cabbage, and salsa fresca, served with a spicy roasted chili salsa for only $12.95. Try it today. Available at Tumon at the Grand Plaza Hotel. For reservations, please call Mezcla at 969-2652.
Yikes, are those Christmas bills coming in already? Those high-interest credit cards at 16, 18, even 24%? Well, we have a New Year's solution for you. A Bank Pacific personal loan with rates as low as 4.65% to pay off those expensive credit cards. It's easy, it's fast, and it's as low as 4.65% APR.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal credit opportunity lender as low as 4.65%. Conditions apply.
UOG Endowment Foundation presents How to Say I Love You, Love Languages in the Pacific, Thursday, February 13th at the Guam Museum from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. $60 per person includes cultural delicacies, free-flowing drinks, and live entertainment. Love Languages in the Pacific will benefit the liberal arts and fine arts program of the UOG Endowment Foundation.
So here we are, center field bleachers, Wrigley Field, Chicago, the seventh inning stretch. A couple things from Facebook I want to mention. Gus Gisangas is now located in Dallas, but no matter where he is in the Lone Star State, he seems to always tune in to Tall Tales. Good call, Gus. And then Frenchie says, interesting that Lou would advertise on this show. And I suspect it's a real challenge for her because she's saying, wow, if there's anything on the air that hurts my ears, it's Bob and Tall Tales. I would much rather listen to a cat with his tail caught in the door than that program. On the other hand, he's got an international radio listening audience and he reaches a lot of people, so just exposure on that station is going to be really good for my re-election chances. So, yeah, we'll go with Tall Tales. And by the way, listening to Lou on the air nowadays, I mean, she's getting more airtime than Mike Lindell. And the next thing, they'll be handing out My Pillow over there at the Hakubotan building. Interesting observation, indeed, Frenchie. So, next item here on the card is Tall Tales versus Mike Carlson. And yesterday I talked about, let me see, I got somebody on the line, don't I? Yeah, I got Adrian on the line. So I'm going to pick up Adrian and then I'll go into Tall Tales versus Mike Carlson. Good afternoon, Adrian.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
I called you a couple of months back. I had, just gotten to the island, was getting myself situated and trying to figure things out. I'm, really involved in politics and things like that. And I'm not any closer to figuring things out, how things operate on this island. And one of the things that was very interesting that you talked about was one of my favorite quotes of all time. You quoted Alexander Fraser Tyler when he talked about the cycle of democracy in 1770. And if you'd have finished that entire quote that he gave, starting with democracy cannot exist as a permanent form of government, and ended with how democracies all end, I think on a micro scale, you can kind of see what he spells out in that speech there, in that writing, happening on this island. I mean, to the point where we are founded, this nation, this great nation, founded as a republic, but no one knows the difference between what a true republic and a true democracy is, which are very clearly spelled out in the Federalist Papers, very clearly, I think paper 10. And to the point where I just walked into Infusion over there in Tumon, went to the head, and there's a picture of Mao hanging in the men's restroom. It kind of blew my mind. And I'm wondering how far and how many times does the same thing need to repeat over and over in history before it's going to be hammered into some of our thick skulls?
True enough, Adrian. I have gone through the whole Tytler workup on the air 3 or 4 times. It's time to do it again, I guess. And of course, the punchline is that we cycle through the whole thing and we wind up back in bondage.
Back again into bondage.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. It's horrible, but you can see it happening all the time, all the way from courage, liberty, abundance, selfishness, apathy, back to dependency, and then into bondage.
Exactly.
So, well, thank you. Doing good work. Really appreciate it, and enjoy listening to you. Have a good evening.
Well, you said when you came you wanted to get caught up on politics, right?
I'm trying.
Yeah, well, you're at the right place. Just keep tuning in to Tall Tales every day, and you'll get there.
Absolutely. I'm getting there. Thank you, sir. You have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Adrian. All right, so a little more politics here. Tall Tales versus Mike Carlson. Ken and I talked. I allowed Ken to cut in the line. I allowed him to talk about this at the beginning of the show instead of waiting until it came up on the card, which I guess since he got the blue star yesterday was warranted. And he sees it as just another way of, putting some money in one of the in-group's pockets. I can't figure out who's going to benefit by it, but it's not right. Something about it is very wrong. And what this article says is that the government of Guam bought a building. And the building that the government of Guam bought is the building that was the legislature building for 17 years until the current Congress building was remodeled. So this article says that the government of Guam bought the building for $1.5 million. And then at the end of the article it says, he said they anticipate $6,000 a month for the lease on the land that the building sits on. So there's a 15-year lease. And Lester would have us believe that you could buy a building that sits on a leasehold and actually take fee simple title to property that's sitting on a leasehold, which of course you can't. So we're paying $1.5 million for something. Actually, I guess what we're doing is we're buying into a $6,000 a month lease for $1.5 million, which seems strange to me because absent more information, that's the same building that the legislature had been leasing for a long, long time. So if there's 15 years to go on the lease, it's the same lease. Why are we giving anybody anything? So when I read this story, I was so curious that I downloaded the Nasty Letter software into my computer, my iPad, and I copied that whole article, and then I sent a note to Janella Carrera, who is the governor's director of communications. And Janella, at the beginning of the administration told me that she would be the recipient for any FOIA requests directed to the governor. Instead of sending it to the governor, send it to her and have the same effect. So this is what I said. Janella, no later than close of business January 30, email to me all public records relating to the acquisition of the building described in the Post article below, as well as the lease described therein. Also, provide public records showing the source of the $1.5 million used to acquire the building. Bob. So that comes up January 30. Today's the 24th. So at the end of next week, I will either have more information on this, or I will be gazing at the documentary equivalent of a stone wall. But as I told Ken, I'm not going to let this go. There's something that just doesn't come out right here, and I'm going to keep pursuing it until I find out exactly what's going on. And if I don't like it, well, we'll jump off that bridge when we come to it, I guess. So let's see. I've got, no, I don't have anybody. Call in. Who was that, Real Joe Cruz? Jimmy?
Oh, that was wrong number.
Oh, wrong. What did he want?
They didn't say.
Oh, it's the wrong number, huh?
Yeah, they didn't say.
Probably thought they were calling Governor Leon Guerrero.
Probably.
Got tall tales by mistake. Boy, talk about a wrong number. Yeah. All right. Let's see. I've got another second ride on the Ferris wheel. We ought to start charging double for the second ride on the Ferris wheel.
True.
Yeah. Okay, another Joe. What do you got?
Okay, Bob, I forgot to ask you, what do they intend to do with that building, the old legislature building?
The story says that, let's see here. The American Job Center, Veterans Affairs Office, and DISID will be moving to the old legislature building in Agana.
So that's good news.
Also,
but the bad news is, why can't they buy the land with the building, right?
Well, why are they buying anything? If my thesis is correct, they already have a 15-year lease on that land. So why are they buying anything?
Yeah, that too. That would be the first question.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I agree with you, Uncle Bob. You're right.
It happens all the time, another Joe.
I guess I passed the test again, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll hang up there and let you get any other callers or finish the program. Thanks, Uncle Bob.
All right. Thank you, another Joe. Okay, so if you want to hear your voice echoing through the halls of the international radio listening audience, it's 888-TALK, 888-8255. And if you happen to be in the mainland, like a lady in Cypress, California, or Augustus Songus in Dallas, or wherever you are in the mainland, put a 671 in front of that. And the country code for the United States of America is the number 11671 888-8255, and you will find yourself talking with none other than the real Joe Cruz, who is a pretty nice guy, and he will probably put you on the air right here on Tall Tales if you dial that number. Boy, you opened up the Tom line again, huh?
I did, sir.
All right. Good afternoon, Dr. Tom Poole.
Good afternoon, Judge. It's kind of a slow afternoon, and if it's all right, I thought I would share with you an attorney joke. You've probably heard all of them. You've probably heard this one.
Even if I've heard it, I wouldn't mind hearing it again. I like attorney jokes so much.
Okay. Well, you know, I had a couple of different assignments where I was doing medical research and got some funding through National Institute of Health. And it turns out that NIH has made a decision to stop using laboratory rats, and they're going to start using attorneys instead. And there's 3 reasons for that. And I'm not sure if you could guess them, but I'll tell you what they are. The first reason was that there's more attorneys than rats, and they breed faster. So that's one reason.
Okay.
Second reason is that sometimes the researchers become emotionally attached to the rats, and that never happens with the attorney. So that's another advantage. And would you want to guess what the third reason is?
It's probably that there are some things even rats won't do.
Even rats won't do. I think they could get hurt.
Yeah. Well, let me take you back to the let me take you back to the 70s, okay, Tom?
Yes, sir.
Remember when the Arab terrorists were hijacking airplanes and flying them to locations in desert locations and making demands on governments and killing passengers if the demands weren't met? You remember that, right?
Yes, sir.
Well, during that era, a group of the American Bar Association chartered a 747 to fly to the ABA meeting in London. And some of those hijackers hijacked that plane and took it to an undisclosed location in the Sahara Desert. And they had a list of demands, release so-and-so from prison and kick Israel out of the Middle East. They had a list of about 5 demands. And they said that and they set a time limit. It said that if their demands weren't met in 1 hour, then every hour after that, they would start releasing 5 lawyers.
That's pretty cold, Judge. Gosh, I still have my cough, Judge. I'm going to die with this thing.
You still have yours, huh?
Yes, sir, I do.
Whoa.
I can't shake this thing. Judge, thanks very much for entertaining me. I'm grateful.
It's always a pleasure to talk to you, Dr. Poole. Thanks for calling.
Yes.
All right, so lawyer jokes, yeah. Okay. If you had 50 lawyers out on the beach buried in sand up to their chins, what would you have, Real Joe Cruz?
I have no idea, sir.
A good start. Yeah. Okay, so we just finished up with, and then I had this mental image of, Lester Carlson's announcement that we bought this building, but that we're going to be paying $6,000 a month on the lease for the next 15 years, right? So I had this mental image, and Kellis said he didn't think it would work, but I had this mental image of bringing in the Goodyear blimp and the mobile blimp and parking them in the air above the legislature building, dropping a tether, hooking it to the legislature building and picking it up at the end of the 15 years and moving it somewhere else. But Kellis said he didn't think that would work. Okay, next I've got Jim Moylan versus Lou. Pretty not an unusual bout here on the card. And this story comes out of the PDN. There's room to cut 5% business privilege tax as GovGuam revenue exceeds target. Senator Jim Moylan on Thursday said a report showing GovGuam's revenue exceeds its target collection justifies bringing down the business privilege tax from 5% to 4%. Senators in 2018 approved a temporary 25% increase in the business privilege tax from 4% to 5% to offset revenue loss from a federal tax reform. The tax hike was extended in fiscal 2019 to 2020. Just as many, I am pleased in hearing that collections for the first quarter of 2020 are tracking positively. This continues to justify that there is an opportunity to eventually reduce the business privilege tax, and I do intend on discussing this with my colleagues, Moyen said. Want to stay informed about what's happening, as you were. GovGuam revenue from income taxes, business privilege taxes, and other sources surpassed the adopted projections by $19.5 million in the first quarter of fiscal 2020, according to a report from the Bureau of Budget and Management Research. It collected nearly $250.28 million exceeding the $230.7 million it projected to generate and allocate for the period. It also marked a $10.7 million increase in collection compared to the same period last year. Revenue of some $22 million, an amount senators want to appropriate for public safety, health, and education programs, and other things. Moylan said he will seek to resurrect his Bill 9 and work towards a reasonable timeline to reduce the tax. What's this reasonable stuff, Jim Moylan? You know, I have this horrible mental image. Moylan's Bill 9 was to take GRT back to 4% effective 1 October of last year. A bill that I severely criticized him for. Said he should make it effective immediately. So, of course, October 1 came and went, and Moylan's bill hasn't been on for a hearing. Now we're obviously rolling in money, so much money that we can advance $14 million on the come for Lou Leon Guerrero's public relations extravaganza. Let me just take a break here, and we'll come back to take this down the home stretch.
Here at APL, our core values give the company its heart and soul. Whether it's connecting your business with our global network through our newly enhanced service or investing our efforts into giving back to the community, APL is committed to serving you. We humbly honor the opportunity to find innovative solutions for you and your business. To learn more about our enhanced service, call 588-4651 or visit www.apl.com/Guam for more details.
Hi, welcome to this ad for new Subway sliders, starting at $1.99 each. How do you want it?
Cheer squad. Woo! Go Subway sliders, starting at $1.99 each. Woo! Give me a ham and jack slider.
Ham and jack slider.
Give me an Italian spice slider.
Italian spice slider.
What's that spell?
It doesn't really spell anything.
New Subway sliders, starting at $1.99 each. Go sliders!
Subway, make it what you want.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Here we are, Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky. Kentucky Derby time. We watched the horses get directed into the starting gate. We heard the call to the post, and now we're heading down the home stretch of Tall Tales, which means I got about 7 more minutes to go before the real Joe Cruz and I go into a Tall Tales limbo. Or is it purgatory?
Sir.
We got to go 2 whole days with no Tall Tales. We suffer through it somehow and come back on Monday to pick up the cudgel. So at the end of this article here about Jim Moylan's efforts to roll the tax back, there's a paragraph. Governor Leon Guerrero had repeatedly asked senators to maintain the 5% tax unless they find an alternative to generating some $60 million in revenue each year. Well, if we're 19 and a half over in the first quarter, let's round that off to 20. It kind of sounds like we're there, doesn't it? Yeah. But of course, Lou corrected herself, and she threw away the $60 million in additional revenue. And she told us that she wants that 5% tax to stay there. How long? You remember real Joe Cruz?
Forever.
Forever. Yeah. Probably to be coterminous with her term as governor. Forever. So, Jim, you got to work hard on getting this matter moving forward. You need to enlist as much public support as you can. Get that bill to a public hearing. I'm sure that you'll be swamped with favorable testimony in your public hearing. And if it gets to the floor, don't make the same mistake that you made last Friday. don't get a tax decrease bill to the floor and let Pito Terlahi hijack it, rewrite it, and turn it into a tax increase. And if he does, don't vote for it like you did last Friday. So, you know, if you go into the ring and you've got your 8-ounce boxing gloves on and your boxer's helmet and your trunks and everything, and you've been sparring and you've been working on your left jab and your uppercut and everything, and you go into the ring and you're going to have a good, clean boxing bout with an opponent, and the opponent says, I don't box, I do MMA. Guess what's going to happen, Jim? You're going to get your clock cleaned. And that's exactly what happened last Friday. All you Republicans got your clocks cleaned. And you didn't even know it because you voted for the watch repairman, Pito Terlahi. He stole what should have been a good bill, completely Frankensteined it, and then you guys voted for it. So you got the right idea here with your Bill 9. And the facts are lining up in your favor with this excess revenue. But I've mentioned this before. You younger fellas wouldn't remember this, but back during the World War II, there was a very popular song that I can still remember called Praise the Lord, but pass the ammunition. Praise the Lord, but pass the ammunition, and we'll all go free. So it's time for you, Jim Moylan, to start fighting for some of the things that you want us to think that you believe in. And this is a good place to start. Okay, and then talking about the great bait and switch artist, Pito Terlahi, Mr. Take Candy Away from a Baby. He's the next item on the card here, and this is Pito Terlahi versus the Post. And I know I'm not going to be able to finish this up today, but I will pick it up on Monday. Here's the headline in the Post. Senator, concerns about policy welcome, but don't you dare question my integrity. That's what Pito's telling the Post. Don't you dare question my integrity. Now, I looked through the staffing pattern of the legislature to see if Pito had hired Greta Thunberg as his speechwriter with a good phrase like that. Don't you dare question my integrity. But I guess he hadn't hired her. But well, let me see if I can pick through here just a little bit and give you some idea of the flavor of it. He says, I know what it takes to be a mayor because I've been a mayor for 12 years. I think the voters of Guam appreciated my experience, and I used the perspective I gained as a mayor to better serve the people of Guam every day. When we talk about the University of Guam, we do not ask sitting senators who are or were professors at UOG to recuse themselves. No. Who in the legislature was a professor at the UOG? I'm not thinking fast here. I'll have to think about that one, but we'll come back to this on Monday. Here's that Real Joe Cruz's favorite song. We've come to the end of the rainbow one more time. The Real Joe Cruz and I will kind of mope through the weekend, but we'll be happy to once again be with you on Monday. Adios.